1. And the parentheses are 165 and 166. And then, as I mentioned, you will have the topics divided into 3 course outcomes. Course outcome 1, 2, and 3. And these are the detailed topics that will be included for course outcome 1. And we'll have it from weeks 1 up to week 5. So after week 5, we're going to have topic number 1. And then for course outcome 2, we start with course outcome 2 on the 6th week up to the 10th week. And then we'll have longest number 2. And then on the 11th up to the 13th, we have course outcome 3. And we'll have our longest number 3 on the 13th week. In the 14th week, we have the final exam. And this is how we'll be graded. Okay. So, remember, sa ano natin, in our 166 and 165, final exam is 40%. Now, we revise it. We have 40% for the long quiz. So, it's 15%. 15% for quiz 1, 15% for quiz 2, and 10% for quiz 3. So, a total of 40%. Okay? And then, for the final exam is 30%. The Coursera is 10%. Tapos, meron tayo yung 10% for short quizzes, promises, math, etc. So, we call this as classwork. So, kasama din yung 10% na Coursera. Tapos, 10% yung short quiz. Ito yung online activity. Tapos, attendance. Pero, I have to read I'll give you a copy of this one. Kung muna ito ko I'll give you a revised version of this one. And this review was included for the 10%. So, it's the short quiz, online activity, as attendance. And then for the other 10%, we have browsing sets, ito yung MATLAB, and then we have the e-portfolio. 2% under which kapag I will revise this. If I will revise this, hindi na ako ng copy.
Listeners lang.
Kasi I'm planning not to have this one. Ito na lang yung short quiz at saka attendance. So, i-divide ko na lang yun sa 20%. Alright, so maybe I put the MATLAB dito sa 20%. Anyway, okay muna ito pa rin. I give you a copy of this paper. Alright, so this is how you'll be graded. So we have 10% for short quizzes, etc., problem sets, etc., 10%. Short quiz is 40%, Coursera is 10%, final exam is 10%. So once you get the total, 70% in the top is the percentage. Okay? So everyone here passed 166 and 165. Kaya nandito kayo sa 176. Okay guys, walang nandyan sa likod ng poste. Hindi ko kayo makita. Wala sa likod ng poste. Okay, so, do you have questions dito? May questions pa kayo sa syllabus? Ang pinaka-importante dito kasi is how you graded. Okay? But again, as I mentioned, I'll give you a detailed explanation on that number. Okay. So, yung e-portfolio bago din sa inyo, right? Wala kayong e-portfolio last time. So, I'll explain that also. At saka yung sa MATLAB. For MATLAB kasi, ang gagamitin nyo doon is the knowledge that you learned in your ICT. So, mag-program kayo. Okay? Alright, questions? Now, we're going to start with the lecture today. And for those who are not my students, ano section niya?
B. Info.
Alright. For those who are not in my class last time, you're new to ano? Anybody who has not, we're not able to access OneNote yet. Kasi, doon kayo mag-start sa Teams. Go to your Teams. I want everyone to go over your OneNote. Kasi yung mga students ko in my class, yung nakatulogan. Yung mga bago, what should you do? Go to Teams. Meron akong invitation doon. Click that one and click class. Is that class notebook? Class notebook by TV. Alright, go to Teams. Tapos dun sa invitation na sinend ko, i-click niyo yung class notebook. And ito yung makikita niyo sa class notebook. So meron na din dyan CO1, CO2, check whether you have an access
pre.
to one of or not. So
Pagdating
for the
mo yan.
information of those who do not know yet
Punta na sa Teams.
what's
Sa
OneNote,
Teams. Yun.
this is an app wherein whatever solution
Sabihin mo
I
kay
do
Ma'am,
here in
bye-bye.
class,
Tayo.
you can access that at home. So you don't have to copy the notes anymore. Kasi kung whatever solutions that I do here in my tablet, makikita niyo siya sa bahay. Hindi niyo na kailangan i-copy. Did you get me?
Yes po.
So ito yan. Halimbawa, nagsulat ako dito. Itong sinulat ko na to, ano yung sinulat ko dito, makikita niyo doon sa OneNote mo sa bahay. When you go home. When you access it.
Ang daling.
Okay.
Ang daling. May ganun pala.
Guys, do you have questions before we start with the lecture?
Wala pa po ako sa Teams. Wala pa po ako sa Teams.
Wala ka bago nagpunta ka sa
Wala pa po sa Teams. Dahil po makakapagin.
it's okay. Later, ma-access. Kahit late kayo na pasok niyo sa class, ma-access niyo pa rin nila. Anybody else? Okay na lahat?
None po.
Can we start with the lecture now? Okay. So, the first topic that we had, so both in Teams, in DB and in OneNote, meron na tayong lessons uploaded. So, lesson 1 to lesson 10, nandun na sa DB. Now, in OneNote, we just have lesson 1 and 2. So, pinagsama ko na dito. So, for the first lesson, it's about limits of functions. Tapos yung lesson 2 is evaluation of limits. Alright, so we start first with how we define limits. So it says here that limits are used to describe the behavior of a function as the independent variable approaches a specific value. Again, limits are used to describe the behavior of a function. So an example is this one. So say we use the function f of x is equal to x squared minus x plus 1. Consider that function. And we know, or we learned this in 165, that the graph of this function is what? A parabola. Right? So ito yung parabola natin. So if you're going to consider this function, now we have to understand how a function behaves as the value of x gets closer and closer to 2 coming from the right and left. So if you're going to look at the graph of the function, ito yung yung graph niya. So you notice here that, when we substitute 2 for x here, the value of your y is 4. And you notice here that as the value of your x gets closer and closer to 2, coming from the left of 2, the value of your y is getting what? Closer and closer to what? 3. Right? The same thing happens when the value of your x gets closer and closer to 2 coming from the right. You notice that the value of your y is getting closer and closer to what? To 3. Because 3 is your limit. Okay? So, which means that from this graph, it says that this behavior described by saying that the limit of the function as x approaches 2 from either side of the function is equal to 3. So, we write it in this manner. We say that the limit of x squared minus x plus 1 as x approaches 2 is equal to 3. So, ito yung limit natin. Okay? Now, we say that this one here kasi is a two-sided limit. Kasi if we want to express the limit of the function as x approaches 2 coming from the right, if you come from the right of 2, right? Coming from the right of 2, our limit is still positive 3. Kasi di ba, coming from the right of 2, the value of the y is getting closer and closer to 3. Alright? So we write it in this manner. So yung positive sign dito does not mean that 2 is positive, but this means you come from the right of 2. Okay. Yung isa naman is the limit of x squared minus x plus 1 as x approaches to coming from the left. So pag negative yung sign dito sa taas ng 2, it means you come from the left of 2. And we say that is equal to 3. So these are three different things. This is two-sided. This is right hand, left hand. Now the two-sided limit exists if and only if the right and left limit are equal. Right? So ito yun. Kaya diniscuss ko muna yan. Because it says here that this limit is also called two-sided limit. Okay, so we say here that the limit of f of x as x approaches a is L, written in this manner. So this is a two-sided limit. Alright? Okay. Now you understand this better when we go to two-sided limits. Alright, now, our strategy for finding limits algebraically has two parts. We start with the simpler functions, and we use the theorems of the simpler functions to find the limits of complicated functions. Alright, now, we start with this one. So ito yung basic theorems. These are the simple theorems. We have the limit of k as x approaches a is equal to k. By the way, a and k here are real numbers. A and k are constants. So the limit of k as x approaches a is equal to k. Right? So look at this graph here. Diba dito sa graph na to, pinakita natin that as the value of x approaches to coming from the right and left, the limit is 3. Dito naman, look at this one. Ito yung graph natin eh. So, if you come from the, say, we have here the number a. So, coming from the right of a, coming from the left of a, hindi ito nababasa palaging y equals k. Diba? So, kahit pa, say for example, we use x equals 10. Say 10 ito. Coming from the right of 10, coming from the left of 10. Y equals k pa rin. Hindi nababago ito. Because we have this as your equation. Y equals k. Meaning, when y equals 10, y equals 5, y equals 6. Ganun pala? So, the limit is equal to itself. So, ito yung example. The limit of 3 as x approaches 25 is 3. Kasi y equals 3, nandito ko na rin. Ito yung y equals 3 mo. So, ito yung line. So, kahit pa siya, kahit pa yung x approaches positive 25, approaches negative 25, or 50, that this will always be what? 3. So, the limit of a constant is equal to the constant itself. Now, yung sunod is this one. The limit of x as x approaches a is equal to a. Kasi, if we have y equals x, when x equals a, yung y mo palaging a pa rin. Diba kasi y equals x? When x equals say 5, when x is 5, ano yung y mo? 5 pa rin. So the limit of x as x approaches a is equal to a. So an example is that we have ito, the limit of x as x approaches 0 is 0. So ito yung dalawang basic theorems natin. The limit of a constant is equal to the constant itself. The limit of x as x approaches a is equal to a. Okay? Now, besides this basic theorems, meron tayo dito mga theorems na to. So that if we have two different functions f of x and g of x, and if the limit of f of x is L sub 1, and the limit of g of x is L sub 2, then what's the limit of f of x plus g of x? It's equal to L sub 1 plus x. This is the limit of the sum is equal to the sum of the limits. The limit of the difference is the difference of the limits. The limit of the sum is the sum of the limits. The limit of the difference is the difference of the limits. The limits of the product is the product of the limit. The limit of the quotient is the quotient of the limit. And the limit of the end root of f of x is the end root of the limit of f of x. Alright? Okay. Now, say we want to find this one. We're asked to evaluate evaluate given that we have the limit of minus x plus what is this? Minus x plus x. Okay. So say this is the question. You're asked to evaluate this limit. So we'll be using here the theorems. So if we use the theorem, x equals x, 8, sorry. Okay, so it would be using the theorem of unit. So, kukunin natin yung limit of every term, right? Kasi, pag limit ang difference, we get the difference of the limits. Pag limit of the sum, we get the sum of the limit. So, therefore, for this one, we'll have to solve for the limit of 8 as x approaches 2. Minus, we get the limit of 3x as x approaches 2. And then plus the limit of 12x squared as x approaches 2. Okay? And from one of the principles here, it says that from here, the constant factor can be moved through a limit symbol. Pwede daw ilabas yung constant factor through a limit symbol. So from that principle, we can write this as the limit of 8 as x approaches 2 minus pwede natin ilabas yung 3 and 12. So we could write this as 3 limit of x as x approaches 2 plus take out 12 first limit of x squared as x approaches 2. Okay, parang pwedeng ilabas ng limit symbol yung constant. Okay? And then we get the what's the limit of 8 as x approaches 2? 8. Because the limit of a constant is equal to the constant itself. Then minus 3 times what's the limit of x as x approaches 2? 2. Plus 12 times what's the limit of x squared as x approaches 2? It's 2 squared or 4. So this gives you 8 minus 6 plus 48. So that gives you 15. Right? So that's how we evaluate limits. Right? Questions? So if you're going to analyze these steps here, you can see that we could just simply what? So we could just simply substitute. But we may not do these steps anymore. Pwede na itong hindi. And this one too. Dito na tayo kagad. So what do? We simply what? Substitute. Okay? Pero, why is it that we explain the theorems? I mean, pwede na palang i-substitute. Ginamit pa yung theorems. Hindi natin lang substitute. Hindi natin alam that we don't, if we don't know the theorems. Kaya lang natin nagawa yung substitution because we use the principle of the theorems. Did you get it? Hello? So again, we can just simply substitute. So ito yung sinol na natin ito. Ito yung sinol ko sa taas. Okay? Hindi na. So in your quiz, ganito pa ba, dadaan pa ba tayo dito?
Hindi na.
Hindi na. Doon na agad tayo sa substitution. So when you are evaluating limits, we simply what? Substitute. Okay? Alright. So let's look at the next examples here. Let's do, okay, for number 2, ganun din. Magsasubstitute lang tayo, right? So when you substitute negative 3 for t, you get negative 3 over 5. But in the third example, dito sa third example, nung mag-substitute tayo, we get a value which is what? 0 over 0. And this is an indeterminate form. So hindi ko pwede yung indeterminate. So what we do is we try to factor the numerator. So we try natin i-factor ito. So what are the factors of the numerator? We want to factor this one. Ano yung mga factors natin? We would have it 2z and then what? Z dito. Then we have what? A and what else? And what? Both should be what? Negative. So minus z minus 16z is negative 17. Right? Can you follow? And then we could possibly, what's the objective? Why do we factor? Because possibly we can cancel that with the factor in the numerator, in the denominator. But this time, our denominator is z. So can we cancel that with z minus 8? Not yet. But you can factor out this negative sign. And if we factor it out, okay, kasi when you distribute this here, negative times positive z is negative z. Negative times negative 8 is positive 8. Alright? Can you follow? So we now can cancel z minus 8 with z minus 8. So pwede na natin siyang i-cancel with this one. So when we cancel, ano yung matitira? 2z minus 1 is left, this one. Pero kasama yung number. Kaya may negative sa number. Did you get it? And then we now substitute. So after substituting, we get 15 as your final answer. Any question? Those at the back.
Is there
Can you hear me?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay. Alright, for number 4, ganun din. So I just may solution na naging 0 over 0 again. So what you do is you factor the numerator and the denominator.
Ito kasi slow pacing to, step by step.
Ay,
So,
step by
ito
step
yung
scheme.
magiging answer.
Easy scheming. Tumatalong.
Yan.
Iba tinatalo.
Tinatalo
For
ng
number 5,
Kaya
like 0 over
hindi ko
0
na-record yun.
Okay, sir.
0 over 0 is number 5. So,
Zero.
hindi natin, we can factor 6 plus
Determine.
h squared minus 36.
Substitution.
Pero, if we're going to expand, pag in-expand nito, when you expand 6 plus h squared, we square 6 is 36. Then, twice the first by the second, you have 12h, and then we square h, it's h squared, minus 36. So, 36 cancels with 36. So, ano matitira dito? This will be what? Yung matitira. We factor out and we cancel 36. So it's like h squared plus 1. 12h. Right? And then we factor out h. So ano matitira dito? We have what? h plus 1. And then h will cancel with h. What's left here?
12.
8 plus 12. So we have here 8 plus 12. And so therefore, this should be now equal to what? We have 0 plus 12.
Zero
And
plus
that's 12. Alright? Okay, questions? Alright, let's go over the next one. What do we do with this next problem here? So, ulit, we need to substitute. Okay? Upon substituting, ito na yung lumabas. We have
Hindi ko naman
0
makita.
over 0 ulit. Okay? So what should we do? Now, by the way, say for example, if you ginawa ko, I write it down here. did something wrong. Bakit? Pag isinulat ko yan, pag isinulat ko yung limit at x approaches negative, may mali. May mali ako. Why? Yes, because you already substituted. Meaning what? That what? When you're substituting, you already what? Performing this operation. Kasi this is an operation. Which means what? You have to find the limit. So pag nagsasubstitute na kayo, pag nagsasubstitute na, meaning you are performing the operation. Which is what? Finding the limit. So kinukuha din na yung limit. So hindi yun na kailangan isulat ito. Kasi nagsasubstitute ka na.
Operation.
Alright? Did you get it?
Functions.
Okay. So since we get 0 over 0, what do we do with this function here? Ano gagawin natin dito? Now we need to remove, we can remove the radical para hindi siya mag 0 over 0. Okay? And to do that, we what? We multiply, we rationalize the numerator. Kasi yung numerator natin ang may radical eh. So to rationalize the numerator, what we do is we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the what? By the conjugate of the numerator. Ano yung conjugate na? Square root of 2x plus 22 plus 4. Minus 4, eh, diba? Ang
Yes,
conjugate na plus 4. So sa baba, you also have the square root of 2x plus 22 plus 4. And that will give you what? That will give me so if you have x plus y times x minus y, ano yung product?
Full method.
X squared minus y squared. So parang kami yung x plus y, x minus y, right? So ano yung product niya? You have the square root of 2x plus 22 is squared minus 4 squared. Right? Over what? X plus 3 times the square root of 2x plus 22 plus 4. Okay, and you have here. So say ganito naman ang ginawa ko, hindi ko na kasigulat. Eh, mali na naman ako. Why? Kasi hindi ka pa nagsasubstitute. You're not evaluating that limit. So ano gagawin mo dito? Pag hindi mo sinulat, what does this mean? Because walang meaning siya. Diba? So we have to write here this one. We have to write this operation that you have to find the limit of the function. Okay? And then we simplify. So this gives us the limit of what? 2x plus 22 minus what? 16 over what? X plus 3
X plus
times the
3.
square root of 2x
2x
plus 22
plus 4.
plus 4. Plus x approaches negative. Okay? So what's the next step? You have here the limit of, simplify the numerator. So 2x you have 2x plus 22 minus 16 is what? 2x plus 6. Then you have 16. Right? Over what? X plus 3
X plus 3
times the square root of 2x plus 22
plus
plus 4. As x approaches negative. Now take note that here we can what? We can factor out 2. So that you have x plus 3. Okay? And that it will cancel with this x plus 3 here. So ano matitira sa numerator? Is this 2. So we have the limit of 2 over the square root of 2x plus 22 plus 4.
plus 4.
This x approaches negative. Okay, ano na sunod na step? should we now have 2 over what? The square root of 2 times negative 3 plus 22
Plus 4.
plus 4. And that will give you what? Everything minus 6.
9.
So, 16. Square root of 16, 4 plus 4. So it's 1 over 4. Diba? Right? Question.
Ito yung hindi nakakaantok. Hindi nakakaantok pre. Naantok tayo sa lahat eh.
Iba binabasa lang.
Oo pre. PowerPoint lang, slideshow lang. Slideshow.
Pero sa ano nga diba, nakapalaki naman sa tablet. Questions? Okay, how about number 7? Number 7.
Ito yung medyo ano.
So, ganun din. We need to substitute, right? So, we have what?
0.
0 over 3 minus square root of 0 plus 9. Kaya, this will give you what?
And then,
0 over 0 na naman. So, this is an indeterminate one. So, what will you do?
factoring.
This time, kung paano natin yung radical. So, we rationalize the denominator. So, what do you do?
Conjure.
We
Conjure.
have
Conjure pa tawag.
the limit of what? X over 3
3 minus. Diyan 0.
times what?
3.
3 plus.
3 plus.
The quantity is plus. As x approaches 0. So, this will give you the limit of x times what? 3 plus the square root of x plus 9 over what? Over ano? 3 square is what? 9. Minus square root of x plus 9. So we have what? We have x plus 9, right? Yeah. Then you distribute. So this becomes what? This is
3
now
times
9 minus x minus 9. Okay, so this is as x approaches 0. So if you simplify, this gives you what? The limit of x times 3 plus the square root of x plus 9 over what? 9 cancels with 9. So it's what? Negative x.
activates.
Can you follow?
Yes.
And then we can cancel the x with this x here. And so if we simplify this further, this is the limit of what? The negative of 3 plus the square root of x plus 9. So it's x approaches 0. And that will give you what? 3 plus the square root of 9. So 3 plus 3. That gives you negative 6. Kasi may negative sa labas. Okay? Questions? Any questions?
Pwede na, pwede na. That's my moment.
Wala. Okay. So now, ito yung may summary dito na when determining limit of rational functions like a0 over 0, we simplify the fraction by cancelling common factors. Ito yung factoring, right? Yung isa naman, pwede rin yung finding the or rationalizing the numerator or the denominator by multiplying by its conjugate. So what time is it? 20 more minutes, right? Okay. So let's go over this. Ito yung sabi ko sa inyo. I'll have to discuss further what is meant by this two-sided limit. So, we have here the discussion of one-sided limit. So the limit of a function is called two-sided if it requires the values of f to get closer and closer to a number coming from either the right or left of the number. However, some functions exhibit different behaviors on two sides of the value of x. Ito yung example. If you're going to look at ito, because this is actually what? a piecewise defined function.
Piecewise.
Diba? So, on different parts, different intervals, different values of x, may iba-ibang values of your y. Iba-iba yung rule of association. Remember? Diba, what is meant by this one? We have a function g of x. Kaya lang, instead of just one rule of association, dalawang rule of association natin. So it means that this can be written as what? G of x is equal to 6 plus x. Pwede din siyang isulat na g of x is equal to x squared. Diba? So, pwede siyang 6 plus x when x is less than negative 2. Pwede siyang x squared when x is greater than negative 2. Did you get it? That's what we discussed on piecewise defined function. Okay. So from this definition here, from this one here, so iiba-iba yung trend ng graph or trend of values of y depending on the given rule of association. So let's look at this example here. So consider this function. Look at this function. But if we're given f of x is equal to the absolute value of x over x, there will be two possible values for f. There will be two possible values of f. It says that it's either positive 1 or negative 1. So kailan siya magiging positive 1? Ano? If I remember, if say you're asked to find the absolute value of 5, it gives you positive 5. What's the absolute value of negative 5? It's also negative 5. Because when we find the absolute value, what we actually do for 5 is we find 1. What we actually do in finding the absolute value of negative 5 is to find the distance of negative 5 from what? From 0.
From zero.
And this gives you what? So ito yun. Right? Now, when we solve for the absolute value of 5, we are actually measuring the distance of 5 from 0. And that's this distance here. So that gives you what? 5.
5.
So kaya parehong positive 5. Did you get it? Okay. So if we want to go here, if we have, it says that there are two possible possibilities. It's either that x is positive. So when x is positive, so what is the absolute value of positive x?
X.
Positive x, right? Over x. That gives you positive 1, right? Now, when this is, kasi pwede rin siyang, this is when what? X is positive. How about when x is negative? So, the absolute value of negative x is what?
X.
Kung negative ito, what's the absolute value? Positive x, correct? Pero ito negative kasi x is less than 0. So, positive x over negative x is what?
Negative.
And this is when x is less than 0. Kaya nagkaroon ka ng two possibilities. Right? When you're going to look at the graph of the function, ito yung magiging graph niya. Okay? So which means that as the value of x, if we're going to look at this graph here, as the value of your x approaches 0 coming from the right, what is your limit? Yeah. By just looking at the graph, as the value of x approaches 0 coming from the right, what's your limit?
0.
1.
Oh,
Diba? Ito yun. Kapareho yun yung nandito natin di-discuss. Dito. Nung nag-discuss tayo ng graph, no? Sa initial ito, here. Diba? Kapareho yun. Coming from the right of 2, what is your limit? 3. Coming from the left of 2, what is your limit? 3. Dito naman, ganun din. As you approach 0 coming from the right, you're going to look at the graph. As you approach 0 coming from the right, your limit is what? 1. As you approach 0 coming from the left, ang magagalit ka naman dito sa left, ano yung limit? Negative 1. Alright? So what do you say of the two-sided limit? Kasi, kailan nag-exist ang two-sided? Pag ang right and left are what? Equal. So, ano yung right doon? 1. Ano yung left? negative 1. So what do you say of the two-sided? It does not exist. Why? Hindi sila equal eh. Diba? Kasi this is our event. It says that for the two-sided limit to exist, the right-hand limit and the left-hand limit must be equal. Look at this one. What does this mean here? This is two-sided. Kasi walang nakalagay dito, right?
Yes po.
So the two-sided limit exists if and only if the right hand and the left hand limit are equal, both equal to that. Did you get it? Naiintindihan ba? Okay, so ito yung isang example. Ang right, 3. Left, 3. So two-sided it exists. Alright? Okay. So let's solve these examples again. We're asked to find if the two-sided limit exists and sketch the graph. O nagawa na natin dito. Number 1, ito ngayon, no? Diba? Hindi sila parehas. Use a graph. Yung coming from the right is 1, coming from the left is negative 1. And ulit. O, diba? Ito. Yung right natin, 1. Yung left, negative 1. So, ito yan, no? Ang right and left hindi equal. So yung two-sided hindi does not exist. Did you get it?
Yes po.
Okay. Let's go over the next example. Okay. Ito yung next example. Ito natin muna isa-isa. So ang next example natin is to find if the two-sided limit exists given that g of x is equal to what? Hindi na lang kasi hindi naman lang makukulangan sa bahay, right?
Yes po.
Dito na lang. So ito yung ano natin, we're asked to find, ito yung question. Find if the two-sided limit exists. Let's do that. Okay, so ito yung question. So, paano makukuha yung two-sided limit? Kailangan, paano makukuha yung limit, two-sided limit? Kailangan makuha yung,
Absolute value.
paano makukuha yung two-sided? Kukunin na ang right and
At
left.
left.
Okay. So, we need to solve for the limit of g of x as x approaches a number coming from the right. Ano yung number? Kasi dito, limit as x approaches a number coming from the right. Ano yung number na negative 2. Very good. Coming from the right. Okay? Tapos, kukunin din natin yung limit of g of x as x approaches negative 2 coming from the left. So if you come from the right of 2, negative 2, sorry. If you come from the right of negative 2, ano gagawin yung g of x? Kasi dalawa yun eh, oh. Diba? If you have here negative 2. Saan yung coming from the right of negative 2? Ito yung region, di ba? Dapat nandito. And this is when what? X is what? Greater than negative 2 or equal to negative 2, di ba? Can you follow? Yung isa is this one naman. And this region is which one? X is less than negative 2. So, when we're looking for the limit of g of x coming from the right of negative 2,
Visualization, visual pa.
x is squared. Kasi ito yung greater than negative 2. Did you get it?
Yes po.
Intindihan? Okay. Ano yung limit as x approaches negative 2 coming from the right? We have negative 2 is squared, and that gives you 4. Okay. Ano naman yung gagamitin natin na g of x coming from the left? So it's what? 6 plus x.
6 plus 6.
And that will give you 6 plus negative 2, which is what? 4. So what do you say of the two-sided limit? If x6, and it is equal to what? 4. Very good. So letters in natin is that we say that therefore,
Maganda.
since what? The limit of g of x as x approaches negative coming from the right is equal to the limit of g of x as x approaches negative coming from the left, then we say that and is equal to 4. Then we say that the limit of g of x as x approaches negative to exists and is equal to what? Equal to 4. Right? Did you get it? Then since the two-sided limit, when the limit coming from the right and left are equal, then we say that the two-sided
Isipas lang kayo sir, pero pag may
and is equal to
Ayan.
slow ka lang.
Questions? Now, you're also asked to draw the graph of the function. Bakit pinapag-graph yung function? Kasi from the graph, that is one. Kasi yung magiging graph, ito yung graph niya eh. From this graph, so the graph is actually what? A parabola and a line. Diba? Okay. Ano yung limit of the function coming from the right? 4. Diba? Ano yung limit coming from the left? 4. Right? So what do you notice dun sa graph? Pag nag-exist yung limit, I mean two-sided, there is an intersection. So, pag nag-exist yung two-sided limit, merong common point. Ito yung common point natin. Ito, this one here. This is the common point. So, meron siyang common point. Kasi nga, nag-exist yung two-sided limit. Now, look at this one. Di ba dito sa ano natin? Dito, oh. Meron ba common point ito?
Wala po.
Wala. Kasi nga, hindi nag-exist yung limit. I mean, two-sided limit. O, dito sa una nating example din, dito, if you're going to look at the graph, oh, meron siyang common point. Diba coming from the right and left? Ito yung common point yung 2 positive 3. Did you get it?
Yes.
Okay. Questions on this one? So, nandito naman yung graph, diba? This is the graph of the function. Now, meron pang another example, which is this one. Dito lang. Alright. So, we're asked to... Ito yung function. Given f of x is t plus the absolute value of 2x minus 4. The question is, determine if the limit of f of x as x approaches to exist. Let's get the graph. So, ano pinapangalap nila? Ano pinapangalap? Kasi ano sabi ko, we're given this function, okay? Ang hinahanap is the limit of f of x as x approaches to. So, ano to? Two-sided. So,
Two-sided.
pinapahanap kung nag-i-exist yung two-sided limit. And you also ask to sketch the graph of the function. So, ano unang gagawin? We find the limit of the function coming from? From what?
Correct.
Yeah, the right of what?
Right of 2.
So, ano unang gagawin? Find what? Ano yung letter A? We have to solve for the limit of what? F of x as x approaches what? 2 running from the right. Tapos, kukunin yung limit of the function f of x as x approaches to coming from the left. And then you compare the values, right? Yan pala. So, ito yun. Nandito na. So, what is the limit coming from the right muna? It's 3. Kasi isa-substitute nyo lang naman eh, di ba? Kasi parang, why is it that pareho yung ginamit? Kasi pareho lang yung function na ginamit, di ba? Bakit? Kasi dito, magkaiba yung ginamit natin eh, di ba?
Yes po, space-wise. As a piece.
Bakit?
Piecewise function.
Hold on, dito mo natin. Kasi piecewise defined function.
Yes po,
Magkaiba
piecewise.
yung right and left. Diba? Magkaiba yung values of x coming from the right of negative 2 at saka coming from the left of negative 2. Ganun pala?
Yes.
Pero dito kasi sa isang to, bakit hindi pareho ang ginamit natin?
Hindi po siya piecewise.
Kasi hindi siya piecewise. Pareho lang yung function.
Ito na lang, matalino pa rin.
So pareho lang ang
Talino po. Ang bago na talaga.
questions. Naiintindihan?
Yes po.
So,
Ang
dito
galing po,
na
ang
yes.
Don't yung this problem na influence minus 4 after. Nung sinabi niyo na po yun.
Oo nga. So, dapat ano yun?
Positive pa rin.
Positive 4. Sorry, talitan natin yung nakaraan. Tama, very good. So, dapat ito, pero pareho din ang sagot. Three,
Sabi ma'am.
dapat siya kasi minus 4.
Bakit?
Ang baby na may back.
Minus.
Minus 4 given. Dito may mali.
Sa taas.
Dito mali. Dapat ano to?
Negative.
Right? Okay? Minus dapat siya. Kasi yung given minus. Thank you for the correction.
Kasi 2 times 2, 4. 4 minus 4, 0. Ang galing.
Okay guys. Pay attention now. So ito na yung right and left. What's the graph of the function? Diba? You know that pagka absolute value, either nakaganon o nakaganon. Diba? So this is the graph of the function. Okay, so pag tinignan nyo ulit sa graph, meron siyang point-to-point intersection. So again, by just looking at the graph, ano yung limit coming from the right of 2? 3.
3.
Very good. Kahit, kumbaga, pagtingin nyo pa lang sa graph, kahit hindi nyo i-value yung limit, kasi minsan ang given yung graph, ano yung limit? Diba? Suppose ito yung given. Ito yung given. Wala ito, hindi ito yung given. Ito yung graph ang given. By looking at this one, what is the limit of the function as x approaches 2 coming from the right?
3.
3 coming from the left?
3.
3. What's the two-sided?
3.
Diba? So, kahit graph lang yung ibigay sa inyo, because you know the principle, you know how to find the limit. Questions?
Ayun. Insulat na ako sa Reddit. Galing mo.
Ito pala yung feeling. Alam mo
Yung feeling na yung tawag.
Mas ang step by step.
Everyone is present. I want to know, sino dito yung vertical na 176? Meron ba? Vertical na 176.
Tataasan to.
I just want to know.
Alam mo.
Exclusive ma'am, exclusive lang ma'am. Exclusive to Lurong.
Guys, dapat wala mag-verify sa 176. Kasi maiiwan kayo.
Sabi ka matama. Sa mga ka-peers mo, o calculus 3 na sila o ano na?
Our objective, your objective is for you to pass 176. Okay? Okay. So we continue with this next topic. We have questions? Mabibili na.
May online po ma'am, sa Friday. May online po, sa Friday.
May online class din po.
Yeah. On Friday, kasi meron kami training. So, meron kami training. So,
May FB ka. May FB ka, boy.
Ha?
May FB ka.
Oo, pre.
Para pa yung tanong.